Okay, what would you like us to do? We're just going to wait one moment. We're trying to get a hold of Councillor, Councillor Martin. Okay, Councillor Hoffman is not online yet. I'm sure she'll be joining us right shortly. So good morning, welcome. I now call the Norfolk County's Budget Committee to order. I would like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. I would ask you to ensure your phones are on silent mode and to keep your cameras on and mute yourself when not speaking. And of course, remember to unmute yourself if speaking. Please use the microphone Teams to raise your hand feature icon to be called upon and to remove it after finishing speaking. The agenda is before you for your approval. There has been additions to the agenda circulated earlier. Staff memo Larry Conrad, Director of Environmental Services, in reference to waste collection grant request from the Simcoe BIA 2021. As well, Councillor Rabbits will be introducing a motion for reconsideration under the Mayor and Council Services section of the budget. Do I have a mover and a seconder? A mover, please. Look over here. Thank you, Councillor Michelli. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Rabbits. Perfect. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Therefore, moving right along, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Prior to moving into the next section of the agenda, I want to bring the Budget Committee's attention to the communication item 5.1, named Budget Meeting Timetable. This timetable outlines the order of which we are anticipating to proceed through today's meeting, as well as provide estimated items which will be discussed. The items highlighted in yellow on the timetable are required to proceed at the timelines provided. However, other items on the timetable are estimates and provide to help guide the meeting's proceedings. Should scheduling have been provided for the deputations relating to the Linwood Arts Center and the Norfolk County Public Library, and will proceed later in the agenda. Today, we will be addressing the proposed 2022 levy-supported operating budget that Norfolk County's team has been preparing over the last number of months. This document includes the funds that are required for the day-to-day expenses. In many ways, this is similar to a typical household budget. Things like the phone bill, groceries, car insurance, they are operating costs. For Norfolk County, the operating budget plans the funding of regular programs and services that the county takes part in throughout the year, such as snow removal, road maintenance, fire services, libraries, and more. The operating budget is funded primarily through property taxes, fees, charges, grants, and investment income. This budget is a plan that not only sets the tax rate for 2022, but also acts as a guide for how the county will operate, setting priorities through the allocations of financial resources. This is a key step in moving the organization towards meeting the long-term strategic goals of Council. At the beginning of the term, Council adopted following strategic priorities. We will lay a strong foundation for those who come after us by undertaking the hard work involved in building a strong financial future and narrowing our infrastructure deficit. It is my understanding that this Council has achieved this strategic priority, and the building of a strong financial future will continue to be the overarching goals and considerations during today's review of the levy-supported operating budget. Therefore, with that, we will now move into our next section of the agenda. I understand that the clerk will provide context related to how changes and motions will be put forward through this meeting. So I will pass it over to Clerk Olson to provide this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vandendriessche. Through the Chair, the Vice Chair, the Chair, Finance, and myself met to decide on a proper process for the Budget Committee deliberations. So as we move through the sections, if there are items that Council would like to change, what we're going to do is do a consensus of each type of motion that you're going to want. We will record all of those as we go along. Then at the end of the day, we will actually do motions for each of those consensus, but it gives you the whole day to think about what's going on for the day. And then I will bring back each consensus as a motion. We'll put them on the floor. We can have a mover and seconder and vote on them individually before we get to the final motion that we need to adopt the budget. And we can take a pause after that just so Finance can calculate any changes in the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Moving on, Section 1 of the budget package provides high-level and overview information of the 2022 levy-supported budget. This section contains staff report CS 22-001, proposed 2022 levy-supported operating budget. The overview, as well as the budget package guide for this section, can be seen on pages 3 to 23 of the budget package. To start off the review of the budget of this section, I understand that we have some opening comments from Al Menendez, Chief Administrative Officer. Following these comments, opening remarks will be made by Shelley Darlington, General Manager of Corporate Services, and Kathy LaPlante, Treasurer and Director of Financial Management and Planning. A formal presentation of the staff report will be made by Catherine Fanning, Manager, Strategic Financial Planning and Reporting, as well as Chris Everett, Supervisor of Financial Planning and Reporting. The staff presentation is attached to the agenda package, item 3.1. To keep things moving this morning, I'm going to ask the committee members to hold their questions and comments to the end of the Corporate Services presentation. Therefore, Mr. Menez, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair Vandendriessche, and good morning to the Mayor of the Budget Committee. We have a full agenda today, and I'm hopeful that the information contained in your packages has provided you with enough information to both answer many of the questions you may have had, but also instill in you the confidence to make an informed decision later today when the proposed budget comes up for acceptance. The proposed 2022 levy-supported operating budget represents approximately a 3.2% net levy increase over 2021. For the majority of our residents, that doesn't mean much. Basically, the important message is that the proposed budget represents a 2.3% tax increase in 2022. For the median residential property, the proposed increase equates to approximately $73 per year, or about $6 per month. Developing a budget within these uncertain and challenging times was not an easy task for staff. Senior leadership spent a considerable amount of time reviewing the budget submissions and making very difficult decisions in order to ensure that important initiatives were addressed while being mindful of the impact on property owners. This was especially important given the ongoing pandemic and economic conditions affecting residents, businesses, and governments. The budget continues to move towards improving the financial situation of the county and represents the first year of a more normalized tax increase in recent years. The ability to present a lower increase than the last two budgets is a direct result of the difficult decisions that this council has made, together with the hard work of county staff to make significant improvements in the long-term financial sustainability of the county. While this budget represents a lower increase than recent operating budgets, the county does remain challenged with various financial pressures. Continued work will need to take place, including establishing clear goals to ensure Norfolk County continues the path to financial sustainability, the courage to make difficult but necessary decisions, and maintaining efficient and effective operations in delivering key services. A key aspect of this will be continuing to focus on the county's reserves to ensure that asset management needs can be met in the future, that unanticipated financial pressures can be met, and that debt levels remain at an acceptable level, all the while maintaining stabilized, reasonable taxation increases annually. This 2022 budget is a critical budget for this council. Collectively, during this term of council, you have made some very important and difficult choices, and this year's proposed budget starts to signal that the county is in a healthier financial state. Not quite healthy, but healthier. It signals that there's a significant financial progress being made in establishing strong financial foundations for the future. And that is something that this council, staff, and ratepayers should be excited and proud of. You have come a long way in your first 3 years. I'm now going to pass it over to Shelley Darlington, our General Manager of Corporate Services, who will provide some remarks before we get into the financial management and planning team. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you, Al. And good morning, Chair Vanden Drieschie, Mayor Chop, and members of council. Today, the review of the proposed 2022 levy-supported operating budget continues the fiscal turnaround which Norfolk County started in 2019. After a couple of challenging budgets with many difficult decisions made by council, 2022 demonstrates the impact of those decisions. The proposed 2022 budget shows the county's considerable progress in building a strong financial future for Norfolk County and presents a stabilized increase in taxes. As Mr. Meneses indicated, the tax rate increase of 2.3% for the median residential property as proposed is lower than the guidance set by council at 2.5%, which staff recognize as a significant achievement. This progress is due to the efforts and oversight taken by council and staff over the last 2 budgetary cycles, where the budget was right-sized after a number of years of deficits. The right-sizing resulted in higher than normal tax increases, though partially mitigated through difficult service level decisions, and was the key in positioning Norfolk to achieve a more natural taxation for 2022, as well as to put the county on the path of long-term financial sustainability. 2021 brought with it a significant number of challenges. However, the county was still able to move forward and accomplish many significant achievements. The forecast within the budget document is based on the most recent variance report and anticipates a surplus for 2021. This comes after 2020, where it was the first year in recent memory that the county has posted a surplus. These improvements are a direct result of the difficult decisions made by council and the hard work of county staff, which will continue to improve the long-term financial sustainability of the county. While 2022 is largely a status quo budget, there are a few notable investments proposed. Some initiatives proposed in the budget include investments in future affordable housing, internet connectivity, the establishment of a Norfolk Community Day, and increased levels of infrastructure funding. These investments address some important needs of our community while still allowing a normalized tax increase as residents and businesses continue to face challenges related to the pandemic. In closing, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Chair Vanden Drieschie and Vice Chair Chop of the Budget Committee for participating in regular meetings with staff and for their guidance throughout the budget development process. I would also like to extend my most sincere appreciation to staff within all of the county departments for their attention to and hard work on the proposed budget. Finally, I would also like to acknowledge the dedication of the financial services team for their many, many long hours of detailed analysis, review, and preparation of the budget itself, related report, and presentations. With that, I'll turn things over to Kathy LaPlante, Treasurer and Director of Financial Management and Planning, who will provide some brief remarks and lead us into the formal staff presentation and Budget Committee's deliberation of the 2022 levy-supported operating budget. Thank you. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Shelley. Good morning, Chair Vanden Drieschie, Mayor Chop, Norfolk County Budget Committee, and Norfolk County residents. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on such an important topic. You'll hear from Mr. Meneses, and you've heard from Shelley Darlington and myself, and finance presentation. You'll hear a lot of the same messaging. Hopefully, one of the main points we'd like to make is that it's been very challenging. However, counts.
Yeah, thank you. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty here. What we're going to do is try to regain that mic out there. So anyway, just a couple of minutes and things will be back to normal. So just if everybody could just hang on. These things happen.
We'll quickly revise our IT budget as well to ask for a little bit more money for IT.
Absolutely. I need a motion. Ms. Fanning is just, Ms. LaPlante is just next door here. I apologize. So she should be getting back on right shortly, and we will continue. I certainly don't want to divert from the timeline. I'm watching the door in case something happens out there. As with technology, it is great when it's working. Okay, what we're going to do is shut down for a couple of minutes, okay? It's a 2-minute break. Thank you. Welcome, Kim. We are on a 2-minute break. I'm not crazy. I'm talking to Al right beside me here, so if you just see me and I don't want people to think I'm crazy, so anyway. Yeah, who's this man beside me? But anyway. Yeah. Still a bit of technical difficulty, but it'll come back. Just so everybody hang in there. We were going on quite nicely there, but things happen. Oh.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes. Good. Thank you, Brett.
Can't hear Councillor Bender just about.
Okay, I think we're back, and I'll ask Mrs. LaPlante if she would like to continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I went ahead and I was talking for quite a long time there before we realized we had some technical difficulties, so we do apologize for that. But I will start over, and I will try and shorten this up and go a little quicker. So to start, I'd just like to thank Shelley. Good morning, Chair Vanden Dreshry, Mayor Chop, Norfolk County Budget Committee, and Norfolk County residents. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on such an important topic today. You'll notice throughout this morning between Mr. Meneses, Shelley Darlington, myself, and the finance team, you will hear a lot of similar messaging. That is because we want to ensure that we have been diligent, council has been diligent in dealing with all the challenges that they have had. They have had some specific goals and strategic plans that council and staff have worked towards over the last few years that we should be proud of. So over the last 2 years, there's been a concerted effort to be more transparent regarding operations and to improve and develop a long-term plan to move to financial stability. Attaining financial stability will allow us the ability to provide and maintain service and infrastructure levels without resorting to unplanned increases in rates or cuts to services. The major financial services that were addressed by council and staff in the last 2 budget cycles included the right sizing of the county's budget to address significant deficits that were realized over the last decade, the adoption of a variety of service level reductions, which were executed after council made a series of very difficult decisions, and moving towards gaining some ground on saving for a rainy day through improving contributions to reserves that were historically depleted through budget shortfalls and to fund critical infrastructure repairs. To address these issues, this resulted in a higher than inflationary tax increase over the past 2 years. In 2020, Norfolk County's operating budget increased by 12%, resulting in an average residential tax increase of 8.4%. In 2021, the operating budget increased by 6.1%, with an average residential tax increase of 3.9%. A total living increase of 18.1% over 2 years. And that is not including increases in the water and wastewater rates experienced by those connected to municipal services. So to begin planning for the 2022 year, Norfolk undertook an extensive pre-budget public consultation, launching an online survey and holding a public forum for community members to provide feedback, as well as a virtual session with chambers, boards, and trades VIAs. During the targeted sessions with the chambers, boards of trades, and VIAs, there was a significant emphasis placed on the need to prioritize investment in affordable housing, which has been included in the proposed budget document. More details will be provided on the engagement from Catherine and Chris. So as mentioned, moving forward, council gave staff a budget guidance target increase of 2.5% for the median average residential property for 2022. This allows us to concentrate on services and the needed time to review the impacts of all the previous decisions that have been made. This decision also takes into consideration the large increases in both levy and rates budgets that residents and business owners have been faced with for over the last 2 years. The 2022 budget continues to be part of this multi-year financial plan designed to return Norfolk County to financial sustainability. It also outlines a balanced approach to meet the expectations of residents and business owners while continuing to focus on long-term sustainability and the overall plan for the county's future. This involved feedback of residents and organizations with the goal of a balance between fiscal sustainability, community needs and wants, and community investing. In addition to the council guidelines, while developing this plan, staff did keep in mind council's strategic priorities and potentially other items that may impact the county in the future. So how did we do this year? As mentioned by Mr. Meneses, the tax rate increase proposed for the Budget Committee's consideration before you today is a 2.3% increase, which is lower than the guidance set by council, which staff recognized as a significant achievement. For the median residential property with a property tax assessment of $240,000, the proposed budget results in $3,222.19 in property taxes in 2022. This represents an increase of 73.63 cents. It was not an easy task to bring the tax increase lower than the guidance, and additional steps were taken by the senior leadership team in order to achieve this tax increase, including clear communication to all staff regarding the target increase and the financial pressures Norfolk County is under, as well as a significant review of decisions that were made by the SLT. This includes new budget initiatives that were heavily analyzed and deliberated. Recommendations by SLT were limited based on the target. Capital plan changes were also recommended within the 2022 capital plan, keeping in mind the 2.5% target. A significant portion of the increase is experienced by the levy relief strategy, additional contributions to reserve, increase in salaries and benefits. Again, Catherine and Chris will be providing you more details on the drivers. And as Mr. Meneses mentioned, though this increase represents a more natural level of increase, it is anticipated that in future years, additional budgetary pressures will be experienced, including future requirements. These pressures include to address the need to increase reserves and also as well to pay for growing debt payments, higher inflationary pressures, supply shortages, new initiatives, one-time items, recreation and museum strategy, asset management plans, etc. It is very difficult and challenging to find and determine a balance between wants, needs, replacement of aging infrastructure and recreational facilities, and overall affordability. We have continued to stress the financial turnaround cannot happen overnight, but we have a clear multi-year plan to change the financial direction of the county despite the continued impacts of COVID. It is very difficult. In conclusion, this budget does include some changes in levels of services, for example, social housing, but does allocate some additional funds to maintaining our aging infrastructure and supporting the county's strategic priorities. Infrastructure deficits and long-term fiscal sustainability are areas of continuous concern for Norfolk County and all municipalities across Ontario. With this in mind, staff will continue to develop asset management plans for core and non-core infrastructure, complete a development charge study to ensure fiscal sustainability is considered when making future decisions. In closing, I would like to thank all finance staff and staff from other departments who collaborated and ensured the budget before council is a transparent and accountable budget. These individuals worked hard pulling this very difficult budget together this year. And lastly, I'd like to pass it over to Chris Everett and Catherine Fanning, who will be providing you with a much more in-depth presentation of the proposed 2022 levy-supported operating budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaPlante. Without further ado, let's get into the 2022 budget details. In the opening comment, Shelley and Kathy, as well as Al, addressed a number of the main topics of our presentation. So today we're just going to focus on internal and external factors that have affected the budget, as well as the budget preparation process, including the results and impacts of the budget as proposed. Now, I will start us off with a discussion on internal and external factors. In order to provide some context around the pressures that are impacting property owners and the county, it is important to look at the current external pressures being experienced. These pressures will affect the residents and business owners in the county and should be recognized when contemplating the tax increases in the current year. The first area to note is that overall economic conditions, both locally and on a broader level, have been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chains, labor markets, and high levels of inflation have contributed to a slower economic recovery than would have been predicted even 6 months ago when we were first getting started on this budget. It is important to recognize that the economy has not yet recovered from the pandemic pressures when setting the anticipated tax increase. Through this recovery, the county will continue to respond to the pandemic, which results in changes in services and pandemic response related costs. We will take a deeper dive into two of the factors identified in the overall economic conditions: supply chain issues and inflation. Supply chain issues result in the difficulty of procuring goods for county services, leading to increased prices. This pressure has been experienced in various operating areas of the county in 2021 and is anticipated to continue. The supply chain issues have been caused by shutdowns, restrictions, and lockdowns all over the world, which have continued through the pandemic and have influenced the global supply chains. Inflationary pressures, as a result of these factors, are being felt by all residents and businesses when purchasing goods and services. According to Statistics Canada, inflation was at 4.7% on a year-over-year basis as of October 2021. Initial impacts of these pressures have been experienced by the county. However, as purchasing contracts continue to be updated, impacts will continue to be incorporated in future budgets. Therefore, the financial pressures as a result of the economic indicators, specifically the large change in year-over-year inflation, are anticipated to continue to drive future tax increases. Municipal requirements and budget pressures are discussed in great detail during the budget deliberations. However, it is just as important to consider the financial pressures placed on taxpayers. The slide before you shows the prior year tax increases, as well as the water and wastewater rate increases experienced in Norfolk County, as mentioned by Kathy in her opening comment. It is apparent when reviewing the residential impacts that over the last few years, higher than inflationary increases have been passed on to the taxpayers in Norfolk County. These considerations were kept in mind when recommending the overall budgetary guidance to Council for the tax levy. As over the short term, these impacts, along with the economic factors, have been impacting residents and businesses in the county. While these increases were not desirable, it was an important and necessary step for the county to move towards long-term financial sustainability. The move toward long-term financial sustainability has been successful due to the significant financial improvements that have been made over the last two budgetary cycles. Not all improvements made by staff and council over the last few years have been placed on this slide. However, some of the notable improvements made include the right sizing of the budgets, which moved the county from the position of operating deficits, and 2020 was the first year in recent history with a levy operating surplus, and 2021 is on target for a surplus as well. The establishment of operating variance reporting has been an important tool to forecast year-end expenditures. This helps provide early warning signs of negative variances and allows time for staff to move into action and contain the costs to offset these variances if required, which was also established over the last few years. Annual reserve contributions have increased from 12.5 million in 2018 to 21.1 million in 2022. This is an increase of almost $9 million in annual contributions and has been vital in moving the county towards the target of eliminating negative reserve balances, as well as paying for asset management needs. Numerous service level and delivery changes were adopted over the 2021 and 2022 budgets, which impact various service areas, including community centers, winter control, arenas, economic development, parks, and museums, to name a few. This has resulted in millions of budgetary savings for both asset management and operating savings. Significant accounting and budgeting improvements have also been made, including the establishment of budgets for the change in liabilities, taxation allowances, and development charge exemptions, and more. Now that these financial improvements have been made and key financial guidelines are in place, the county is in a much stronger position to face the 2022 budget as well as future budgets. I'm now going to invite Chris to walk us through the next piece to consider while setting the budget, the public engagement.
Thank you, Catherine. In order to get an understanding of community desires and areas of concern, staff in financial management and planning worked closely with the communications team to launch the 2022 budget engagement campaign in September of 2021. The campaign included several opportunities for feedback from residents, including a budget survey and 2 virtual engagement sessions, one that was focused with, one that was general and one more focused with chambers, VIAs, and boards of trade. The survey was completed by approximately 750 respondents. Additionally, the virtual engagement sessions were very well received, with suggestions from many participants that this type of engagement occur more regularly in the future. For 2023, staff intend to further develop the engagement process as the feedback is very valuable. Shown on the screen here are results from one of the survey questions relating to tax increases. Of the 750 responses, 55% suggested to keep tax increases at or below the rate of inflation. 27% felt that the rate should be based on more on the needs of the county, maintaining assets and service levels, as well as investing in new services. And finally, 18% of respondents indicated that they felt the tax rates should be set to maintain assets and services with no focus on new services. It should be noted that these results are actually quite similar to what was received in the 2021 survey when evaluating tax rates. Survey participants were also asked to rank the areas of investment that they felt were the most important priorities for investment of taxpayer dollars. As can be seen, the #1 ranked priority is investment in core services for residents. These include emergency services, roads, bridges, and other items. Ranked second was attracting and retaining business to the county. Generally, from other feedback received during the sessions, many feel that by growing business, this will create jobs and also in the long term creating new commercial assessment, which would help with funding in the future. Investing in soft services like recreation, libraries, and museums was ranked third, but still above items like high-speed internet, affordable housing, and increasing tourism. Interestingly, during our session with the chambers and BIAs, there seemed to be a consensus that while high-speed internet is needed in the county, the municipality's role should be limited to one of advocacy rather than direct investment. And the group felt much more support should be put towards investments in affordable housing, as it was felt that these would have more lasting impacts on the community. So moving into the budget preparation process, one of the guiding principles used in the development of the budget was the budget guidance, which was approved by Council on July 20th. This slide represents the guidance approved relating to the levy-supported operating budget compared to the results within the proposed document that you're reviewing today. The first point of guidance, and arguably the most discussed, was for the average residential property tax increase to target 2.5%. The proposed document presents a budget with an overall tax increase less than the current rate of inflation and below guidance at 2.3%. As noted in the opening remarks, this was not an easy task and represents a significant achievement. The next point of guidance is that the first $1 million in assessment growth revenue be applied against the 2022 increase. For 2022, growth is estimated to be $592,000, so the effect of the overall increase is less than what was anticipated at the time guidance was approved. An important item to note, which will be discussed in detail a little further in the presentation, is that the 2021 levy relief strategy is be removed. The levy relief strategy essentially artificially lowered the 2021 levy requirement to provide taxpayers with relief of a portion of the tax increase required during the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding of $2 million was borrowed from and subsequently repaid to the legacy fund in order to balance the 2021 budget. Since there is no levy relief proposed for 2022, the removal of this revenue item has a $2 million impact on the 2022 levy, which is approximately 1.9%. Another key point of guidance was for staff to focus on the implementation of various options which were approved in the 2020 and 2021 budgets. As a result, approximately $884,000 worth in annualized levy savings are reflected within this budget. A new process for 2022 was that a staff report outlining business cases for new budget initiatives be presented to Council prior to inclusion in the budget document. As a result of significant review and prioritization of requests while balancing the pressures facing taxpayers and the guidance of a 2.5% increase, two new budget initiatives were presented with business cases to Council in December and are included within the proposed document. The total net levy impact of both of the initiatives is approximately $1,100. And finally, the guidance noted that key financial and budgetary principles remain in force. Despite it being a challenge to develop a budget in line with the tax increase guidance, all financial policies were followed and remain in full force. With that, we come to the net levy requirement in the proposed budget. As mentioned with the guidance slide, the 2021 levy requirement was artificially lowered by the legacy fund revenue of $2 million, which was brought in to provide relief to taxpayers during the pandemic. Essentially, the 2021 levy was $107 million without the levy relief strategy. The total would have been $109 million. This means that removing the levy relief funding from the budget for 2022 automatically had a 1.9% increase in taxes. From that starting point, we're left with the operational changes for 2022, which include base budget adjustments, new budget initiatives, and council approved initiatives. The total net operational changes, which we'll review in greater detail shortly, represent an increase of $1.4 million or 1.3% for a total 2022 net levy requirement of $110 million. So what does that actually mean for the residents of Norfolk County? We'll take a look at the impact on the median residential property, the most common metric used when discussing the annual budget impact. Besides the net levy requirement, there are a couple of other factors that have an impact on property taxes and the change from 2021 to 2022. These include assessment growth resulting from new or improved properties, and changes in education tax rates provided by the province. Assessment growth, as mentioned, is estimated at $592,000, which equates to a 0.6% reduction in the total net levy increase. In addition, at this point in time, the province has not provided draft education rates, but given the continued delay in reassessment by MPAC, it is assumed that the rates will remain equal to 2021. Staff feel this is a conservative assumption as this was the approved approach for residential properties in 2021, and in previous years in recent history, residential education rates have actually been reduced. As the education rates are estimated to remain status quo and the value of the median residential property remains equal to 2021 at $240,000, this results in a total 2022 tax increase lower than the municipal increase. So once all of those factors are considered, the result, based on the proposed budget, is a median residential impact of 2.3%. We've mentioned that while the proposed budget comes in within the guidance set by council, it was not an easy task. So the question is, how did we get here? Throughout this process, the budget guidance established was the overall target. During the early development, staff was increasingly concerned that the target tax increase of 2.5% would not be met. However, a number of strategies were used to ensure that the target would be the highest level proposed to the budget committee. These strategies include clear communication of the target set by council was highlighted to staff along with other guidance factors. Early discussions were held by the senior leadership team to determine strategies that would help to ensure the target was met. Financial management and planning staff completed initial adjustments and recommendations prior to department changes in order to limit the smaller changes that often occur and focus on areas of the budget that would have the greatest impact. Several senior leadership team review meetings took place where difficult decisions and budget adjustments were made. As well, strategic capital plan changes were recommended to support the targeted increase. And finally, new budget initiative requests were reviewed in detail and heavily analyzed by the senior leadership team. Ultimately, only the 2 initiatives were recommended to move forward with a very minor levy impact. This gives us an idea of how we got here. So now we're going to take a closer look at the budget being proposed. The major budget drivers represent the budgetary changes that are included in the proposed budget, resulting in a net levy increase of $1.4 million or 1.3%. These, of course, are in addition to the removal of the levy relief strategy. The money going out section on this slide represents drivers that are increasing the net levy requirement, and the drivers listed within the money coming in section represent drivers that are reducing the net levy requirement. So the first driver, infrastructure funding and other reserve impacts, represents the additional capital infrastructure allocations included in the budget and includes reserve transfers, debt payments, as well as a budget where capital projects are directly funded from the tax levy. These increases for 2022 are driven by additional transfers to reserves required to fund the replacement and rehabilitation of capital assets. The $1.1 million increase is less than originally anticipated for 2022, as reserve transfers were reduced in order to meet guidance, but will continue to be a driver and an area of focus in future years as we work to ensure financial sustainability for the county. Salaries and benefits increases of $1.8 million, excluding funded areas, are the result of contract merit and benefit increases, as well as impacts of staff turnover and job evaluations. These changes were the changes where funding is received to offset the costs of salaries and benefits have been excluded from this figure, as it does not drive the change in the levy increase. As discussed earlier, inflationary pressures are significant given what has been going on in the economy as a result of the pandemic. Given the uncertainty in this area and the increased pricing that staff have been seeing, a placeholder of $300,000 has been included in an attempt to mitigate some of this risk. These funds will be strategically managed by the senior leadership team to ensure in-year bids can be awarded that are essential to county operations while ensuring no resulting deficit. The next item is one that is likely a driver for most every municipality at this point in time, given what has been happening in the insurance market. Due to the hardened market, insurance premiums, deductibles, and the reserve transfer are driving an increase to the levy of $684,000. The next item is for development charge exemptions. These exemptions encourage development, but still need to be funded. An increase of $300,000 has been included in this line for 2022 as a result of some of the known larger impacts relating to current planning and building applications due to exemptions related to central business district developments, affordable housing, and brownfield developments. As well, recently assessment changes have been more significant than in the past, which seems to be a common theme for many municipalities. These adjustments are often related to larger assessment appeals that are being settled. In order to address this, the budget for these changes has been increased by $600,000. Finally, Service level changes as a result of new budget initiatives and council approved initiatives have an impact of $421,500. A summary of these initiatives has been provided in section 5 of the budget document. Other net operational changes have resulted in an overall levy increase of approximately $250,000. With that, I'll pass things over to Catherine for the money coming in.
Thanks, Chris. Now that you've walked us through all of the major budget increases for 2022, let's focus on some good news. I'm going to outline the main drivers that are reducing the net levy in 2022. The biggest driver resulting in net levy savings is that ministry funding has been confirmed related to COVID-19 for the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit. This is the driver of this $2 million levy savings. During the 2021 budget preparation, no funding had been confirmed from ministries, and as such, all of the COVID-19 response costs were funded from property taxes. Now that additional funding is being provided, taxpayers will feel the relief for 2022. In addition to the plan anticipated by the province for recovery, the costs assumed for the corporate response to COVID-19 have been reduced. This has resulted in further savings. These combined factors have been put together to make up the budget driver of $2 million. The difficult service level reduction decisions made by council in 2020 and 2021 budgets are also paying off. The implementation of these options have resulted in savings of $883,000 in the 2022 budget. The major items providing savings include the targeted labor reductions, additional user fee revenue, which were approved options in 2021, as well as lower winter control costs, which was approved in 2020. Additional revenue of $350,000 for tax penalty and interest is also reducing the budget. Last year, council had approved that all penalty and interest charges for the 2021 interim and final tax billings would be waived for 2021. This was a one-year approval, and as such, this revenue budget is being added back as a revenue report, and those charges will resume. The budget has also been reduced for retained education from payments in lieu of taxes by $300,000. Education taxes are paid by all properties classified as payments in lieu of taxes. There are a few classes in which the municipality is able to retain the education and does not have to remit to education boards. As this is an increased revenue source, this results in a reduction to the net levy requirement. The budget for the change in post-employment and sick leave liability is recommended to be reduced by $220,000 based on the most recent actuarial study recommendations. Finally, additional funding is being budgeted in paramedic services related to the land ambulance grant. The funding budget is increasing by $232,000 based on funding levels which have been approved in 2021. A portion of this increase is due to the additional service level approved in 2020 for additional shifts. The ministry funding cost sharing approval was confirmed this year based on budgeted costs. All in all, that explains the largest budgetary changes in the budget. Now that we have provided some background information on what's driving the tax increase for 2022, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. The pie chart on this slide is a visual representation of the budget and demonstrates how the county is using each municipal dollar that we receive by service area. At the first glance, it is easy to see that the largest portion of tax dollars goes toward paying for infrastructure capital infrastructure. Just over 1/4 of every dollar that is received by the county is put toward infrastructure needs. This includes payments toward reserve transfers, debt servicing costs, as well as capital projects funded directly from the levy. Since this is such a large portion of each tax dollar contributed, it is no surprise that it is also a major driver of the budgetary increase as identified by Chris. It is also important to note that this allocation of funds is in line with the public budget engagement which indicated that core services should be the area with the highest taxpayer investment. When talking about core service delivery, this includes things like roads, bridges, and emergency services. When reviewing this visual representation, it is easy to see that this has been maintained for 2022, as these are the most significant pieces of the pie. Let's now turn our attention to the service level increase included in the 2022 budget. Keeping the significant economic pressures in mind and the budget guidance, it should be not a surprise that not a significant number of service level improvements have been requested within the proposed budget. This year, there are 2 new budget initiatives that have been recommended by the senior leadership team for consideration. These initiatives were presented to Council in December with comprehensive business cases in Report CS 2175. As a quick reminder, the initiatives being recommended are for the Norfolk Community Day, which is the proposal to create a new event that would take place in June of 2022 and would continue annually. The global pandemic has affected community events, and there is a need to connect Norfolk County citizens with an event that will offer free programming and entertainment at county facilities. This would present an opportunity to foster our partnerships with community groups. This initiative has been proposed with a net levy impact of $0 as staff are anticipating to seek sponsorship revenue to offset any cost of this initiative. The second initiative is Bylaw Enforcement Summer Student. This is a request for the addition of a summer student to provide additional parking enforcement related to lakefront communities of Port Dover, Long Point, and Turkey Point, and urban centers. The financial impact of this position is proposed to be offset through the parking fine revenues that will be generated through this position. The budget also includes service level changes that were approved by Council during 2021, and these have been included as Council approved initiatives, a summary of which has been included in Section 5 of the document. As we are nearing the end of our presentation, it is important to recognize that the budget is based on best estimates available at the time of development. As information typically improves with time, perfect information is not available during the budget preparation process. This results in a level of risk in the budget. However, due to 2 specific risk factors that are continually and quickly changing, staff feel there is additional risk inherent in the 2022 budget. These factors are COVID-19 and inflationary pressures. Both of these factors are pervasive or affect many areas in the budget. The good news is that these risks have been partially reduced by a few items. Number 1, over the last 2 budgetary cycles, Council and staff have worked hard to reduce the level of risk taken by the county by right-sizing budgets. The financial policies set through this process have been continued in 2022's budget. The risk will further be reduced through the continuance of quarterly variance reporting, where cost-saving strategies could be identified if financial results are forecasted to be in a negative position. However, it should be noted that if these financial pressures from these factors continue over the long term, this may impact budgets or service levels in the future. Speaking of the future, let's move into the next slide. Though the main focus today is the review of the 2022 budget, it is also important to step back and take a look at the financial future of the county. Decisions today will impact the financial situation of Norfolk County in the longer term and will impact future year projections. On the slide, projections are shown for future net levy increases, as well as levy debt and levy reserve levels. If more information was available relating to business plans and future strategies, more detailed projections would be possible. However, this projection has been completed at a high level. These projections have been built based on the approved 2022 capital plan, as well as an assumed 3% increase in expenditures annually. Revenue impacts were also forecasted to change at the same level as expenditures, except for where ministry funding has remained stagnant over the last few years, or reductions in funding were known. Though 2022's increase has been proposed at a level lower than inflation, this trend is not projected to continue over the next 4 years, where higher than inflationary budgets are forecasted at increases between 4 and 6%. The main driver of this impact is that as inflationary costs continue to rise, the county is also trying to move towards a more sustainable infrastructure funding model. Continued recommendations will be made to increase reserve contributions, and at the same time, there will be additional debt servicing costs based on the planned capital expenditures to maintain our infrastructure. During this same period, our debt will double from $57 million in 2022 to $108 million, which is shown in the chart at the bottom of the page. This is the leading cause of the peaks projected in the net levy over the forecast period. It should be noted that the graph displays the forecasted net levy increase. The actual impact experienced by taxpayers will also depend on education rates and the level of assessment growth. However, when looking at this projection, it will continue to move the county towards long-term financial sustainability. This is demonstrated through the levy reserve projected balances, which shows that a greater than inflationary increases will lead to a $9.2 million increase in reserve balances at the end of the projection period. This takes the balance from $20 million to $29 million by 2026. Now let's bring back the focus to 2022's budget, which is the next step in continuing Norfolk County's trajectory towards the goal of building a solid financial foundation. In closing, thank you very much for listening, and we will now hand things back over to Councillor Vanendriessche.
Thank you. Thank you for a very well done presentation. So at this point, I'm going to ask, excuse me, if there are any questions of council relating to the staff presentation, as well as any opening comments. Do I see any questions? First hand I see up is Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair Vanendriessche. My only question is a request for a little bit more information concerning budget drivers. It's a nominal figure, but still important. So can you just share with us, Catherine or Chris discussed that section, what makes up the other pressures fund?
Sure, Councillor Martin, and through the chair, it's Catherine, I'll take that question. So the other pressures line is basically any other change that has been made in the budget, summed together to balance to the total budget change. So more details on those changes is actually throughout the whole budget package. Specifically in section 3, you'll see additional drivers for each department, with the ins and the outs and the ups and the downs. So it's a lot of smaller changes that are combined to make up that 200,000 number.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Van Passen and then Councillor Columbus.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And a question to staff. A couple of times you've mentioned that we are expecting or hoping for a surplus for 2021's budget. Now, is my thinking correct? Is the reason that we have a surplus or expect a surplus is because staff have done an excellent job of controlling our costs in 2021. But late in the year, we got an unexpected bonus from the province with a little bit extra funding to help all the municipalities across the province with the COVID financial pressures. And am I correct in my understanding of that budget driver?
Sure, Councillor Van Passen, through the chair to you. Definitely the surplus that was projected June 30th, 2021 was almost $4.7 million by the year end. And of this amount, you're right, the largest portion was that $2.4 million was related to pandemic costs that were budgeted where funding has been confirmed. So you'll see that echoed through our budget presentation, where that's also a driver of the budget, like cost lowering. or money coming in section of our drivers, where we mentioned that $2 million in additional savings has been provided by the reduction of costs, because we're realizing those savings now in our budget. So you're right, a large portion of the surplus is due to the pandemic.
Thank you.
Councillor Clubbas?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Excellent presentation of the budget. Couple questions here. The first one is impact does the assessment growth, that's what we base our increase on for supplementaries. And do you feel that that is a realistic status of where we are with our assessment growth? Or did COVID impact perhaps some of the numbers that maybe they should have been a little higher?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, I'll start and then I'll see if Kathy or Chris has anything else to add. But I would agree that the pandemic has likely impacted MPAC's assessment growth. I think we're aware that MPAC had actually stopped going out to visit properties to actually reassess properties. So that could have, if there was some new building or growth in building, and they have yet to complete those assessments, that could have resulted in lower assessment growth this year. Over the last year, and approved through a budget option last year, Norfolk is working on engaging the assessment-based management contractor. And so we're actually anticipating that contractor will help us pursue and kind of act as a tapping MPAC on the shoulder even more and saying, hurry up and provide us some of that assessment growth as soon as possible. So we're just still working on, I believe, awarding that contract. And so that will start early this year, where we'll hopefully be seeing some of those impacts of growth that may have been lost from the pandemic.
Thank you for that answer. And secondly, do we have a handle on how many dollars taxes are outstanding for the 2021 year compared to previous years? Because of the COVID and perhaps some residents did not get their taxes paid, do we know if it's significantly increased the outstanding taxes from the previous?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor Columbus. So we did take a look at that as of year-end 2021 to just see if there was higher taxes receivable. And so year-end for tax, unaudited figures obviously, but for taxes and penalty, we were about 12.7 million a year in 2021, whereas that figure was actually higher in 2020 at 13.1 million. So of that amount, 11 million relates to taxes, and a portion of that is related to taxes that aren't actually due yet. So payments in lieu of taxes, I think about 1.5 million are included in that outstanding balance that aren't actually due until the end of January or February timing. So we're actually looking in pretty good shape as comparatively to 2020. And we've done some other metrics, like looking at the receivable as a percentage of the current year's tax levy. And it actually looks like we're more favorable than in 2019 and similar to 18 and 17. So nothing to kind of raise concern in our eyes at this point in time.
And for 2022, you have ruled out the penalty, relief of penalty?
That is correct, Councillor Columbus. So that was a one-time approval. So we're assuming that we're going back to our regular process where no waiver for current year interest or penalty is being provided.
Yeah, because I know I have received some calls about that, where they'd like that reinstated, but I don't know how other councillors feel about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Columbus. Moving on, we are getting close to our deputation time, but if there's no further questions, I'm wondering if we could move to that, and we can always go back to section 1 if there's a need. Any further questions? Thank you. Therefore, we will now move into discussions of section 2 on the budget package, which includes requisitions made from boards and agencies. We have 2 formal deputations which we'll proceed with first. Prior to hearing our two deputations, I would remind the speakers, Mr. Very and Mr. Anderson, that there is a 5-minute time limit. The Norfolk Public Library budget is presented on pages 26 to 29 in the budget package. To begin, we will have Mr. Adam Very and Richard Anderson. If you would please proceed.
Hey, good morning. Thank you very much for having us this morning. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the successes and accomplishments of the library board and staff this year, and then Richard will come on to sort of break down into the numbers. So, you know, the library, as we all are in Norfolk County, has been facing several challenges related to COVID. But you know, over the last year, the staff and the board has managed to do a lot of what I think are really good things. So we've adapted again the services several times to accommodate for the changing rules and requirements, and provided nonstop just about service to the community at all 5 branches. And that includes, of course, the books and services like that related to traditional library services. But we've also been able to do, you know, things like the tax clinics that we've always offered. We've done those curbside to keep those services for other community people that sort of, you know, the vulnerable, let's say, that need those extra helping hands from the library. We've been done those. We've also, as you know, we had to adapt to the $216,000 cut from last year. And so part of that was we committed to doing a substantial fundraising campaign, and I'm pleased to report that we were able to reach that goal. So we had set a $61,000 goal for our own fundraising, and we've actually surpassed that by just a little bit, and that's really due to the community stepping up and agreeing that there's a lot of value to what the library does. So while managing those two, you know, substantial challenges, you know, we're also able to offer, you know, our regular slate of programming especially with the youth programming, in a revised manner, but we're still able to get that done. The board has been able to do a what we called a COOLS program, which is a business continuity plan. COOLS stands for Continued Operation of Library Services. We also updated our policies that were required by the Ontario Library Association for accreditation, and we launched a youth engagement strategy. And another substantial thing we've been able to do is hire a new CEO. We're just about to have that on. As we all know, Heather King retired at the end of 2021. And so beginning in October, we've been interviewing candidates, and we finally have someone sort of, we're waiting for the final, you know, agreement, but that's a major, you know, achievement that the library's done as well. And then just generally, I want to mention that how, you know, while people are watching, how hard the library staff has worked and continues to work. They have been incredible. They continue to show up, good cheer, good attitude, you know, rolling with the punches, so to speak, and without them, you know, the community would be at a huge loss. So I hope that council is, you know, at least in a roundabout way aware of how valuable the library is to the community, and what a treasure it really truly is. It should be something that Norfolk County and Norfolk County Council is extremely proud of. So that's just the general state of things, and I would like to turn it over to our interim CEO, Richard Anderson, to actually present the figures.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning, Mayor Chop, Budget Chair Vanden Drieschi, Council, and Norfolk County ratepayers. In this budget, the library is asking for a 2.5% above last year, which equates to a dollar amount of $66,700. As per your budget package put together by our friends in finance, there are 3 main budget drivers in our ask. The first major driver consists of a substantial increase to our interdepartmental charges. These charges are set by Norfolk County and include a $10,500 increase in corporate insurance premiums and deductibles. The second driver to our request is to offset the removal of the New Horizons grant. This is a grant that we apply to yearly for various initiatives related to assisting seniors and vulnerable populations in Norfolk County. In 2021, we were approved for the grant and were very successful in implementing a multi-tiered program specific to area seniors and their technological needs. To date, in spite of the ongoing pandemic situation, we have assisted and engaged over 100 seniors with various technology requests and are just now rolling out the next phase, which includes the lending of cognition kits designed with seniors for seniors to improve and enhance their way of life and sense of independence in the community. This program is now being implemented into our regular curriculum of services for 2022 and beyond. Please keep in mind that the New Horizons program is in addition to the over 700 programs we already offer through 2021, with an overall attendance of almost 13,000 participants. We will continue to offer these types of programs through 2022 in your NCPL branches. The third main driver in this budget is a capital project that would allow us to move forward with the creation of an outdoor community space at our Waterford branch. This space would be a Wi-Fi zone with benches for the use of all Norfolk County ratepayers and will provide our team the opportunity to develop and engage all ages with innovative outdoor programming. We are already very fortunate that our friends at the library groups in Port Dover, Delhi have created fantastic outdoor reading garden Wi-Fi spots such as this at their respective branches. In closing, I would just like to say, on behalf of Norfolk County Public Library Board and staff, thank you and Norfolk County for your ongoing support, and we look forward to the continuation of our joint partnerships and initiatives through 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, very well. I'd just like to acknowledge that we are extremely proud of our libraries, and they are a very vital and valuable part of our Norfolk County. So with that, thank you, Mr. Very and Mr. Anderson. We will consider your comments as we proceed with our budgetary deliberations. At this point in time, I'm looking for a motion to receive, unless we have any questions. Are there any questions? Yes, I have Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to compliment the library staff on their fundraising efforts over this past year. It was extremely difficult due to COVID. And just to reiterate the core service that the libraries do play to our community. And the citizens of Waterford and all of Norfolk County are looking forward to that beautification project happening at our Waterford branch. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huffman. At this point, like I say, if I'm looking for a motion to receive as information, may I have a mover, please? Mover, Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Are there any? And no, we had our questions, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is approved. Next, we have the Linwood Centre budget requests. We have the Linwood Centre budget is presented on pages 33 to 37 in the budget package. Mr. Nunn, when you are ready, is Mr. Nunn here if we would like to proceed?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Thank you. If you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Chop and council members, for once again allowing me to discuss the budget request for the Linwood Arts Centre. My name is Stephen Nunn, and I'm the treasurer of the Linwood Board. And you recall on November 9th, I presented our 2022 budget, which included a request for county support for $93,650 for the full year. This is an increase from the $50,000 we received for 6 months of support in 2021. In a subsequent meeting with the county's finance team, they've stated that they would be putting forward $50,000 for us in the 2022 budget document. I want to take this opportunity to recap our request for the $96,350 and provide additional information on the risks if this full amount isn't received. Linwood's vision continues to be that we are a hub for the creative arts in Norfolk County and a key landmark in the revitalization of downtown Simcoe. We have a number of programs and exhibits planned for 2022 that will engage the community, promote local talent, provide learning opportunities for all ages, and promote tourism while showcasing our remarkable collection. Let me first say that the Linwood Board appreciates the continued financial support from the county. This money has been key in our ability to find resources to develop programs and initiate a fundraising campaign. Using tools we've developed, such as the Case for Support found in your package, we've been fortunate enough to identify a number of Norfolk County families who are prepared to financially support Linwood. They understand the importance of the arts to Norfolk County residents and are willing to make a multi-year commitment. However, with Linwood's history, they have requested that these donations be made to an endowment fund, where Linwood will be the beneficiary of the revenue earned on these monies. Based on conversations with these donors, our fundraiser anticipates that we could secure well over $500,000 within 5 years. We're very excited about this opportunity. Not only does it demonstrate strong community support, but an endowment fund will provide a dependable revenue stream for Linwood into perpetuity, securing our legacy well into the future. The Norfolk Community Foundation has agreed to partner with us to manage and administer this fund, and as the endowment grows, the revenues to Linwood will also grow. However, these donations will not be immediately available for Linwood, and the revenue for 2022 will be minimal. We have and will continue to apply for grants and have identified potential sponsors for our programs. This funding will support our programs, but these are restricted funds and must only be spent on the delivery of the identified program. This means our operating funds will be limited for this year. In addition to building on our much-needed fundraising initiatives, our community wants to hear specifics about the programs and exhibits we are planning. This requires a curator program manager to focus on developing and bringing art initiatives for the community to life. This is a separate skill set from fundraising, and most art galleries, including Linwood, have not been successful in finding someone with both these skills. We would like to secure the fundraiser position for all of 2022. Without the additional $43,000, there is a risk that we would not be able to afford our fundraiser past the end of June. Between now and June, our fundraiser needs to continue to work with the families who have indicated an interest in our endowment fund structure and secure financial commitments, identify and secure corporate sponsorships and government grants to support our programs, and then identify and meet with individuals who would like to become regular donors to Linwood. We expect most of these donations would be available for our general operations. As the mayor mentioned in our meeting in November, the county is also looking to us to help fundraise for any capital improvements to the Linwood building. The list provided to us by the county's team has identified about $500,000 in capital investment required over the next 5 years, with $35,000 of that occurring in 2022. Without the county's additional support, we cannot guarantee that our fundraiser will be available to work on this past June. Another risk to the reduced funding is that Linwood would likely have to decrease the number of curated exhibits this year. Each exhibit costs about $15,000, and we had planned for 3 in 2022. This reduction would have a snowball effect of reducing visitors, which helps us to identify potential donors. In summary, with $50,000 of support from the county, Linwood will survive 2022. But without the additional $43,000, the key risks will be a reduced number of exhibits and insufficient operating funds available to keep our fundraiser for the full year, which will lead to reduced donor revenue for Linwood's operating and capital costs after July. This is a formative year for Linwood with exciting opportunities ahead. We have a very dedicated and growing board at the helm who have committed their valuable time and own donations to ensure the Arts Center's success for Norfolk County. We hope that we can count on your continued support during this crucial period to build on the momentum we have achieved in 2021. And on behalf of the Linwood Arts Center Board, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nunn. I'm going to open it up right now for some questions. Are there any questions to, I'm sorry, I just seeing these little hands here. Councillor Martin, you're first.
Thank you, Chair Van Andrieschie. Through you to Mr. Nunn. Thanks for your presentation, Mr. Nunn. Just clarifying, I know that we've discussed this, but because of the closure and the timing, the Linwood Arts Board was not eligible to apply for funding from the province because of COVID relief funding. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in fact, we're also not eligible for any Ontario Arts Council funding because we have to be an operating gallery for 2 years. So because we're essentially a startup, we have to wait those 2 years.
And so continuation of your fundraising role will at least assist with applications to the province, not necessarily the art funding, but to provincial supports. And that is definitely a priority of that role.
That is certainly a priority, and that will be that funding tends to be focused on programs. It's not necessarily operating funds, and the operating funds are what pay for the salaries of the curator as well as the fundraiser.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, I will consider this deputation and we will continue our budget deliberations. Could I get a mover and a seconder to receive it as information? Mover, Mr. Tom Micheli, Councillor Micheli, seconded by Councillor Huffman. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. At this point in time, we're going to take a break, I think. I'll defer over to Madam Clerk.
Through the chair, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule, but that's great. But we would suggest we take a 15-minute break at this time.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to take a 15-minute break. So everyone will be back here in 15 minutes. Thank you. We are on air. Thank you. I hope everybody had a good break there for a moment. The remaining boards and agencies to be reviewed in Section 2 and the Police Services Board, the Grand River Conservation Authority, and the Long Point Regional Conservation Authority. These can be seen on pages 30 to 32 for the Police Services, pages 38 to 39 for the Grand River Conservation Authority, and pages 40 to 41 for the Long Point Regional Conservation Authority in the budget package. Therefore, there will be no presentations for this section of the budget, and however, we will open the floor for any questions of staff for these areas of the budget. So I'm looking to council if there is any questions concerning these particular areas. I'll give you a moment to cruise that. I have Councillor Huffman. If you would go ahead, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question in regards to the Police Services Board is concerning the speed watch signs. I guess I'm still not very comfortable with the fact that those have been delayed. I know that myself and pretty much every councillor is continuing to receive concerns regarding speeding, particularly in hamlets and things like that. We've had a number of fatalities in this area. Driving is a big concern here in the county. So I just wanted to make it known that I don't support that still be on hold, and I would like to see those reinstated into the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huffman. You make a very good point. That is a concern in many of the hamlets. Moving on to Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe this question is directed possibly to some of the board members from the LPRCA. I see there is a little bit of a decrease in the requirements for 2022, and most of that's driven by a decrease in special benefiting levies from 2021. But if we look ahead a few years, are there some major reconstruction projects coming up over the next few years that is going to bring this number back up again?
Thank you, Councillor Van Passen. Do we have someone, a staff from?
I think Councillor Columbus might have the answer since he sat as chair for the last few years.
Well, that would be a good point.
Yes,
Councillor Columbus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To Councillor Van Passen, I would expect that there's going to be some changes in the future because there are coming forward due to the new Conservation Authorities Act that was just released, I believe, in December. There's going to be mandated programs and unmandated programs. So some of those unmandated programs may end up costing each municipality in the jurisdiction that they are in more money. So that is all to be laid out. I think Mr. Menzies, the CAO, he's been involved with some conservation staff, and perhaps he can chime in on this as well. But I would expect there's going to be some changes coming forward.
Mr. Menendez, are you able to respond to that?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I see the mayor's got her hand up as well, but certainly to Councillor Columbus's point, we have started discussions and dialogue with conservation staff, and indeed there is a change afoot as mandated by the province, and we will start quantifying and looking at what that means. Whether or not that will have an impact on our levy or not is still to be determined. I think there's several memorandums of understanding that need to be initiated and signed and negotiated. So we are in the process of doing that. And as that process moves forward, we will certainly keep this council updated on the status of those negotiations and discussions.
I pop my apology over to Mayor Chop.
Yeah, I think the mandated versus the unmandated changes for the mandatory programs. I don't, I think that pales in comparison to some of the large increases that we're going to see over the coming years with the LPRCA budget. Councillor Van Passen, like you commented, in terms of the special levy that's associated with LPRCA, we have a number of dams looking out into the future capital plan that are either going to need, repair, replacement, or removal. So depending on what decisions are made by the board, that could have a significant multi-million-dollar impact in the coming years on our upcoming budgets.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on any of the other? Seeing none, and being that we are ahead of schedule a bit, what my plan is, or what I've been instructed that would work out fine, is if we could move from there over to number 9 on the review timetable, which would be the Health and Social Services. So I will read what we have first before section 3, and then I will ask if Mrs. Van Dyke Ellis is prepared. We will now move into discussions on Section 3 of the budget package. This section outlines the operating budgets proposed for Norfolk County's operational divisions. Each divisional budget is separate by subdividers. The Budget Committee review of this section of the budget will be completed by division. A plan will be provided with estimates of time frames to keep us on track with deliberations for each of the divisions. We will proceed as following. We will first have the general manager's presentation of the divisions, scheduled for 10 minutes or less. Time for committee questions and answers for the division will be scheduled for approximately 20 minutes or less. The staff presentations attached to the package item is number 3.2. Staff presentations will focus on divisional level and by page, and page review of each department has not been planned for today's deliberation. However, should a committee member have a question that relates to the particular department, it is encouraged that these questions be raised following the divisional presentation. Prior to the divisional presentation, I will include the division being discussed and will outline the pages within the budget package that will be covered within the presentation. So we will come back we are scheduled for a Board of Health meeting at 11:15. But prior to this, we have some time, so we will start our review with the Health and Social Services Division, which are outlined on pages 48 to 76 of the budget package. I would like to invite Mrs. Heidi Van Dyke Ellis, Acting General Manager, to present the Health and Social Services proposed 2022 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vanden Driesche, and through you to members of council. I'm pleased to be joined this morning by the directors of the Health and Social Services Division, who can assist with answering any of your questions. On the line with me this morning are Mr. Syed Shah, the Acting Director of the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit, Ms. Stephanie Rice, the Acting Director of Social Services and Housing, and Mr. Bill Nolan, the Administrator of Norview Lodge. So next slide, please. The Health and Social Services Division, it consists of 4 departments: Public Health, or the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit, which includes the teams of infectious disease and vaccine preventable disease, healthy growth and development, environmental health, school health, substance use, oral health, and professional practice and quality assurance. In the Quality Planning, Accountability, and Performance Program, you can see that we have program planning, our epidemiologist, program monitoring and evaluation, data management, and continuous quality improvement. In the Department of Social Services and Housing, we have the programs of Ontario Works, housing services, homeless prevention services, children's services, and then Norview Lodge, our municipal long-term care home, which provides housing and support to 179 residents. Next slide, please. So in terms of the successes in 2021, in the QPAP program, we have had a number of staff on the QPAP team who have been redeployed to support the health unit COVID-19 response, including our epidemiologist, our health planners, our program evaluators. They have been assisting in various roles, including outbreak management, seasonal agricultural worker support, the vaccine clinic operations, vaccine planning, and logistics. In social services and housing, the Homeless Prevention Services team, through the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, or the CHIPPE, successfully delivered 4 rounds of the social services relief funding. This is provincial funding that was provided to us to support vulnerable people who were negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Supports included funding for our community partners, increased emergency housing options for isolation when needed, rent and utility bank support, and the community food program. Council will recall that there were also capital funds to support new affordable housing development that were available and allocated through the Social Services Relief Fund. The Ontario Works program has been responding to changes in provincial direction related to program delivery as a prototype site for employment services transformation and centralized intake. And Children's Services has delivered emergency childcare for essential workers during times when school closures took place as a result of COVID-19. Norview Lodge has continued full service delivery during the entirety of the pandemic. Multiple operational changes have occurred based on changes in provincial regulations for long-term care, including advanced screening and testing protocols, PPE usage, and responding to outbreaks. The Norview team has done an amazing job at supporting residents and each other during the pandemic. We all know that long-term care homes have been particularly vulnerable during COVID, and the Norview team has gone above and beyond to support and protect our residents. Next slide, please. In terms of 2022 priorities for QPAP, the next strategic plan for the health unit is scheduled for review and update. And so the QPAP team will be working with the health unit in order to conduct that review and make that update. In social services and housing, we will continue to respond to changes in provincial direction using an integrated model for human services. Integrated service allows for more holistic, person-centered service that recognizes that a client often has needs that overlap our program areas. And so we need to ensure that the services that we offer are easy for clients to access and navigate. It also maximizes the provincial funding that we receive. We will also need to respond to whatever changes come about in our children's services delivery model as a result of the pending National Child Care Program. In housing and homelessness prevention services, the team will be reviewing our emergency housing program in response to Council's request, and we will be bringing forward options for Council's consideration. At Norview Lodge, we will be continuing to monitor and respond to provincial regulatory changes in long-term care as a result of COVID. At this point, we don't know what a post-COVID world looks like for long-term care, but we do anticipate that some of the COVID changes, for example, screening and testing, may continue. And so we will continue to adopt these changes in our service delivery, and we will continue to keep Council up to date. Next slide, please. So in terms of the main budget drivers, the first one, the transfer to an affordable housing reserve, included in the budget package is a description of the service level change in social services in order to ensure that we remain at the 50-50 cost share for the Ontario Works Administration budget. These levy savings are being redirected to a reserve fund to support new affordable housing initiatives. We have seen recent examples where funding from higher levels of government have been available for projects that are shovel ready and can achieve occupancy within a short time frame. So, for example, rapid housing initiatives. This new reserve would allow for the potential support from the municipality for startup funds to get projects to this shovel-ready place to be eligible to access provincial and federal funding that may become available. You can see that this transfer is a net zero levy impact as it is directly related to the Norfolk share of the second budget driver, which is the reduction in the Ontario Works Administration budget, directly related to the service level adjustment. The increase in salaries and benefits are a result of annual economic and incremental increases as outlined in our various collective agreements. And the last budget driver, the Norfolk share of the increase in social housing provider payments, are as per the calculation that are mandated by the Provincial Housing Services Act. So the Housing Services Act tells us how we need to calculate the annual operating payments for our legislated social housing providers. There are various indices that are provided to us by the province that our finance colleagues use for the calculations, and we have seen significant increases in operating costs for our housing providers, including such things as hydro, natural gas, and insurance, which are not outside of what we are seeing in the broader housing sector due to COVID-19 and overall rising costs. So with that, Madam Chair, I would be happy to open the floor to any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Dyke Ellis. That was very informative. And yes, you're right. Are there any questions relating to this presentation or information that is on pages 48 to 76 of the budget package? I'll entertain questions. I have a question from Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this comes from page 57 out of the big binder there, that one of the initiatives with the quality planning accounting department is to redevelop a 3 to 5 year plan, but they want to base that on the 2019 needs assessment. And I just question, with all the things in the world that have changed so drastically since 2019, whether that data would still be valid or whether you'd have to sort of start over and double check the data. So I wonder if you have any comments on that, Heidi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Van Passen. Certainly the community needs assessment gives us a good base of what the community needs were in 2019. As Council is aware, that was the study that we used as the basis of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Certainly, COVID has provided us a lot of additional and new information about public health and public health services, and that will certainly inform our health unit strategic plan going forward. As well, Council is aware through the annual service plan that we have received some provincial funding for a strategic service review in public health in light of looking at making sure that our service delivery model and the services that we provide are modernized and are in full alignment with current provincial direction and what we think might be provincial direction going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Vandendriessche. Through you to Heidi, a bit of a broader question, not directly tied to a specific page and probably builds exactly on your last comment of the service review. But where in the budget do we make plans, given the fact that we have provincial support in a variety of roles for our health unit right now? I know that we don't know what the new normal is. I know that we may not be accounting for those roles to stay forever. I'm sure some of them will. Is that reflected in the budget presently for future plans to roll over? Is that just wrapped into funding we've received from the province, or is that all going into that, the review that we do have funding from the province for? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Martin. When we prepared the Health and Social Services budget, if we are fortunate enough to know what our funding levels are in our various departments from our various ministries, and this year we are fortunate that we do know that, then we can include more accurate information in the budget about our funding levels. If there are years where we don't know yet what our funding levels are, then we assume a status quo funding level and we plan based on that. So our staffing levels are planned based on our funding, our mandatory programs, and our accountabilities to the province as they currently exist in our funding agreements. So each of our departments, Public Health, Social Services and Housing, Norview Lodge, those departments are all, and activities of the QPAP team, those work plans are all connected to accountabilities that are outlined in each of our provincial funding agreements. And that is connected back to our budget. So that is reflected in the budget. So the funding levels and the accountability agreements that we have help us to plan and support our planning for work plans and staffing levels for the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, I'm going to defer to Clerk Olson. At this point in time, there will be no motions coming out of this because we want to go into the Board of Health. But I think it would be maybe appropriate to take a few minutes break, or would you like to, could we defer and stop and maybe take a couple minutes, like I said, or should we move on into the Public Health meeting?
Through the chair, my advice would be we could move on into the Office of the CAO reports. We have about 15 minutes, so we might be able to get through a couple of those presentations before Board of Health.
Okay, we'll do that then. Thank you very much for that clarification. Next, we will review the Office of the CAO Divisional Budget. This division, which is outlined on pages 78 to 109 of the budget package. This section will be presented a little differently than other divisions in the budget. The Chief Administrative Officer, Al Menendez, has requested Teresa Olson, County Clerk, Aaron Anderson, Director of Human Resources, Gord Stillwell, Fire Chief, and Sarah Page, Chief of Paramedics, to join him in this presentation of this divisional budget. I then will pass it over to Mr. Menendez. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and appreciate our Budget Committee's indulgence. I thought it was important that the Budget Committee hear directly from our clerk, from our two chiefs, and from our Director of HR, so that you can hear firsthand in terms of what their priorities and successes were, just in light of the fact that I am still relatively new at the corporation here. Just in summary, so you can see the various divisions within the CAO, or the various departments within the CAO's division. On the next slide. Next slide. So just a very quick overview on some of the things that we're looking for in terms of past successes and 2022 priorities and objectives. In summary, you know, the Office of the CEO continues with the ongoing development of management accountability, and establishing a framework so that we can address leadership and strategic direction, results and accountability, people management, financial and asset management, information management, service delivery, and organizational values and culture. Very much trying to lead the administration, trying to set specific strategies and goals, and try to keep everyone aligned to achieve council's priorities. In 2021, a summary of some of the successes include the response as a result of the pandemic. As this council is well aware, 2021 presented some very unique challenges for staff as there was a stop and start and constantly shifting goalposts that staff had to react on a regular basis, oftentimes without much advance notice on changing guidelines from the province. And I can tell you firsthand in the meetings that I've been with, we've got some dedicated staff that work weekends, that work evenings in terms of trying to respond to ever-changing conditions. And we've got some very dedicated and committed staff within the organization. 2021 also started with the realignment within the corporation of some of our operating departments and divisions, and that work continues in terms of solidifying some of those realignment and some of those changes and ensuring that that gets embedded and successfully incorporated. We've also done some tremendous work on improving our customer service strategies. More work, of course, required on that, but we've started to plant the seed, and council will start to see some improvements in our customer service strategies and implementation of those strategies in 2022. Of course, through the DOMIS initiative, you've started to reduce some of the county's footprint in many public sector organizations. The second highest cost in the organization is often real estate and facilities after your salaries and benefits, and this continues to be a very high priority in 2022 for this administration to continue to look at our facility portfolio and looking for opportunities to bring some more efficiencies in regards to our facilities and our real estate footprint. And of course, another success is to continue on with council's direction and trying to keep budget aligned with the strategic direction that council continues to provide to staff. In terms of our 2022 priorities, of course, top of mind is to finalize some recruitment of key vacant leadership roles. We've got some key vacancies right now. We've got some key leaders that are in acting roles, and part of what we will do in 2022 is prioritize the successful recruitment of those roles and get some folks in there that will continue to lead council's initiatives and bring those objectives into fruition. Another priority will be, of course, to kickstart the organizational cultural transformation. We've talked a bit about that in terms of bringing a culture within our administration that focuses on customer service, that focuses on service delivery, that makes the organizational culture in our workplace environment a place where staff are happy to come to work, where they're proud to call Norfolk County their employer, and we're going to work on some strategies to transform that culture. Of course, top of 2022 as well will be to review that county solicitor department, and council will have a report shortly in regards to recommendations on how we're going to move forward to fill that key vacancy and specifically what we're going to be doing with that department. And council will also have in front of you shortly is a report that will identify 2022 priorities. As a management team, as a senior management team, we've started to meet already to identify 2022 priorities, keeping in mind the strategic plan that council has, your term of council priorities. And part of what we want to do as a management team is bring some report forward to council to talk about our 2022 priorities and give you a status update on previous priorities and where we are achieving those strategic priorities. In terms of some of the 2022 budget drivers, before I pass it on to the team, minor adjustments in salary and benefits, and you do have a minor increase in external legal services, and that's specifically related to prosecutions. We've done a lot of work, preliminary work in terms of prosecutions on a few files that council is aware of. We also have a few litigation matters that are proceeding that we expect we will start to have some increased legal fees to address as those multiple litigations move down the path. And we also have some employment related matters as well. So a minor increase in external legal services to address where we're at with some of those high priority files. And with that, council will have an opportunity to ask some, or budget committee will have an opportunity to ask some questions, but I'm going to pass it on next for our clerk, Teresa Olson, to provide an update on the clerk's department. She will be followed by Aaron Anderson, who will talk about HR. Gord Stillwell will talk about fire, and then Sarah will talk about our paramedics, and then collectively we will be available to answer any questions that budget committee members may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, if we could have the next slide, please. So the Clerks and Bylaw Department is responsible for providing a variety of services to Norfolk County, including provision of support to council, legislative services, information management, and bylaw enforcement. On top of that, the clerks provides a number of other services related to vital statistics, business licensing, civil marriages, and the internal mail and courier. Our department is responsible to support the municipal decision-making process, promote healthy, safe, and harmonious communities, and adhere to legislative requirements. 2021, I believe, saw a lot of successes in our department, but we'd like to highlight four of them for council's information. So conducting of the Ward 2 by-election and the council refresher training that was completed in the summer, the implementation of a digital meeting management software to streamline our council and committee meetings. We saw some significant results and moving forward with respect to cannabis enforcement. And we created a lot of public education and enforcement related to the COVID-19 regs during the pandemic. Similar to our successes, we have a very heavy priorities for 2022, but I'll highlight four of our major ones. Obviously, the 2022 municipal election and council orientation is the highest one on our list. We also have a plan to do a strategic review and consolidation of a number of municipal bylaws and policies. We are going to continue with education and proactive enforcement measures amongst many of our services. And we are looking at implementing a virtual city hall web-based customer payment system to help with the parking fine payments. We are also looking at some online application processes to streamline the processes for our residents and businesses. Our budget drivers are related to salaries and benefits. We have an increase. Those are standard increases that we see most years. And then we have some computer software services that increased due to our information management and our meeting provisions software. And that is it for us. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If not, I would suggest that we are getting close to the 11:15 time, so we may want to take a break to move into Board of Health. But again, if there's any questions before that, I'd be happy to answer.
I'll ask council, is there any specific questions to Clerk Olson, or can we take a couple of minutes and then move on to the Board of Health meeting, which Mayor Chop will be chairing? So I see no questions. What we're going to do now at 11:13, we will take a break. I apologize, and resume at the 11:15 mark. Thank you.